Hi, this is Paul Neale at Penn Productions, and today's tutorial is going to be on doing a clay tile roof like this. I've only used two different primitives, essentially just a tube and a box, and I've managed to create all this. So this is 100% procedural, and we can adjust anything. And so let's get going on this and see how it's done. To get started, we're going to use the to primitive. We're going to skip to the front viewport, and I'm going to drag this out about, I don't know, whatever size you happen to need. And I'm going to drag it out so that it has, a positive height value here and the pivots at the back. You'll kind of see why as we move forward with that as to, why I'm saying that specifically. Now, one of the things we don't need are all these sides and everything to get going. I'm going to reduce this a fair bit. We may only need, a handful of them. I'm going to turn on slice and you'll kind of see why now. I'm going to go from 90 to -90, and you'll notice that with the 6, we actually, have as many there because it collapses, kind of pushes them closer together. So that's not bad. Maybe less along the length just because we're going to be pushing some, a fair bit of polygons, but all of this is going to be addressed and be able to be adjusted as we go. So it really doesn't matter because I'm never going to collapse anything. Generate mapping coordinates on it's already, mapping on a per, object basis here is already going to be set up. So now I'm going to set up the array modifier, to be able to array this out. They're going to automatically spread themselves apart by their width, which is really nice. So as I add more, they're going to, push themselves out. If I go back to the tube and I were to, adjust the size of it, it's going to automatically adjust for the size of everything else. Now, the array modifier, the way, these kinds of tiles work, is that there's one going over the top, one going underneath. That way, when water drips down between them, it falls into another trough and it goes down the trough. So to get that effect to happen, we're going to have to rotate every other one. So I'm going to choose local rotation, alternating, and then we're going to alternate them. Now, which axis, if you really want to know, right click, alt right click, pick local, or choose local up here. And we can see it's around the Z. I want to say 180. And you can see now it gives us, one up, one down, one up, one down, which is perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. And then we got to move them closer together, so the offset between them. And, maybe just push me in something like that for now. Now, they also have to get pushed up. And so again, the position is going to be alternating, and that is going to be on my local Y up. So I can then move those so they nest together really nicely and they kind of fit together, in this nice little sort of grouping here. Now, again, I can go back down to the bottom, and at any point in time, I can go in and adjust these and tweak out how everything is, and it all updates. Now we probably want some taper on these because they fit together a little better when they have some taper. You want to taper it below the array modifier. And so I'm going to add a taper and just give it a little bit and maybe a little bit of curve to it. It kind of looks nice. I don't know. Probably, I don't know if they have that kind of curve, but it looked nice when I did it. So it'll just adjust that taper up a little more so those fit in nice and snug and they're all fit together. So now that we can get this going across, we also want it to be able to go up. So that's going to take a second array modifier. We can't do it with this one, and you'll see why if you try. You do this, what you get is this problem, is that it is on alternating. So it's kind of flipping them all over the place. So we can't extend it in the other dimension without another array modifier being applied. So we don't need that one. We need this one. And again, we can pull that down, and now we need to adjust how closely together they're going to be packed. And this is where we could go into the the settings of the first one, the settings of the taper, and play with the taper more or less. So we can actually open it and close it a little bit, taper it a little bit, give it a bit more sort of gap between them if we like. We could also use the rotation values and the random rotation values, which we'll come back to in a minute once we have something working. So the first array is going to handle how wide it gets. We need an uneven number here so that we've got 27. That way we have the last one, going down and up and over the, I mean, I guess you could do it the other way. And then we can determine how, how many we need in this direction and take it in this direction. Now, let's do a couple things. One, let's make this look more clay-like. And here's a really easy way to do it for creating a custom color. The clay shaders can be handy, I find, but it overrides all your materials and everything else you've got going. So what I like doing is just setting it onto clay, and you'll actually notice I have a preset clay color here. All I did was go and select one, add custom color, go to the color picker, and then find the clay color that I liked and I wanted to keep, and said add custom color. Now I don't have to have clay necessarily turned on. It doesn't look exactly the same, but I can go in and apply my clay color, and I have, clay looking tiles for now anyways. Or you could of course apply a material, which, would make sense as well. So we have this. Let's do some randomization. I'm going to go down to the first one and start randomizing some of the values down here. So we've got some random position. Z is going to be, along the length, so I can, randomize some of those. If you notice, it's growing it, so that's because the position. It's because it's trying to randomize them, and if it makes ones longer and some shorter, it could end up pushing it out. Um, we could also randomize them up and down just a little bit, except they're going to start to crash into one another, might become a problem. But we could also do some random rotations, a little bit on Z, so they're just, each one is just a little bit off, and then a little bit on Y maybe, so they're a little bit different, and maybe a little bit on, and again, so all these little random values help and get you a little bit better sort of overall solution. We can go to the random on the next one as well, and you got to understand the random. This one is doing random, along the length this way. So these randoms are happening on chunks and not, not sort of individual pieces. But we can go ahead and randomize them a bit, um, you know, just to try and break it up a little bit. But you are going to start getting this ugly crashing, and you may need to limit some of that. And there's not much you can do about them if they start to collide into one another, other than play around with some of the values and how you're building it. You'll see that I've got some coming through one another here. So, so to resolve some of that crashing, I can actually just taper it more. So if I taper the each piece more, it means that the underlying pieces are narrower, and it's going to taper and fit them together a little bit better, which means it gives me a bit more room for pushing some of these randoms and ensuring that I've got some nice sort of variation going on in them. And that's looking pretty good. So we've got a chunk of roof going, and now we want to be able to tilt that and get it in place so that we have, an angle to the roof. Now, what everyone wants to do is immediately go in and tilt it. Problem is, what you've done when you do that is you've changed the local axis and rotated it. So when we go to do anything else with it, we're going to find that it's going to want to mirror, for instance, across that axis. So instead of doing it that way, we're going to rotate it and deal with this, in a sort of a local space without actually doing that. And we're going to do that with X-form modifiers. So we're going to grab an X-form modifier, 2 on the keyboard to get into the settings, the gizmo for it. I want to be able to rotate it down to the angle that I'm looking for. I want to be able to curve it as well. We'll do that before the X-form, or else you're going to get an odd, solution there. So then we just need to dial it up and then figure out what axis it is. So best way to do it is dial it up, play around with it. If none of those work, set it to 90 degrees and then go about finding that axis again. And we'll see that now we've got an axis that we can rotate it and pull it down. I think I've got too many rows. I'm going to go back, maybe just take off a couple, and you can see it just automatically updates back to the X form. And I'm going to rotate the gizmo again, so again 2, and make sure I get it at the angle that I'm looking for. Now the reason again I've done that is if I add the symmetry modifier and I want to symmetry this, it's going to symmetry across the correct plane because I haven't rotated the object. So now it's all sitting in the correct axis that I would expect. So to get this cut off on the ends, I'm going to do that. We can do it before symmetry if we like. We could do it after symmetry. Well, we can't do it after symmetry. Sorry, we got to do it before because we got to work on this only. So I'm going to add a slice plane. And again, you can see it's lined up correctly. I'm going to say remove negative or remove positive. We'll see. Into the gizmo, into the rotate, angle snap on, which is A. And we want to rotate it over. And then we want to move this sideways until we crop it off. I'm going to leave just like the last one sticking out there. Kind of looks good. Something like that. I'm going to take that. I'm going to say copy, and I'm going to go paste. And same thing. I've got it. It's going to come down to the other end. And oops, this one, sorry. And I'm going to bring that one down to the other end. And I'm just going to say remove the other way. And then I've got to rotate it around so we've got 45 degrees the other way. And again, I'm going to move that in so it maybe just kind of crops off the same amount on the other side. Get out of the sub-object mode, and you can see now we've got a chunk of roof that's working perfectly well. So I'm going to take that roof and now copy that. So Control V, just copy it in place. I'm going to say copy, not instance. And I'm going to rotate that around into its new location. So it's got to be rotated 90 degrees. And then we're going to have to move it over into where we're going to need it. Okay. Now you can see that I accidentally cropped off too much. I didn't do them at the right angles. So I'm going to go back down to the first one here. I'm going to hit my rotate, and I'm going to go into the gizmo, and I'm going to pull it back one notch and just get out of that. And then this one, same thing. I'm going to pull it back one notch again so that they fit together exactly. For this one, I'm just going to turn off the symmetry just for now, so it's off, so I don't have to be looking at it. And we need to crop this off more the other way. So I'm going to go to the slice on the other side. I'm feeling this one's probably going to have to get rotated as well. I probably rotated both of them a bit too much, and it'll be one snap on the angle snap. And I'm going to pull that over so it crops it off the other side perfectly. And we can set it so it goes down the middle. And now you can see the end of the roof isn't correct. And that's simply because there are too many in the array, in the first array modifier. We can pull those back down, and you can see that we can address how many of those we actually need to have the right kind of overhang on the roof. Back to the symmetry modifier. It's in the right place again. It hasn't been rotated mistakenly. One on the keyboard to get into the gizmo. Alt-A for the align tool, and I'm going to line it up to this one into the center. So I'm going to line that up to the center so it should snap to the other side. Now, if you'll notice, one thing I didn't fix was the slice on this piece of the roof on the other side. So we'll just go and grab it. So again, we're doing it in the sub-object, and I'll pull it back one notch, and now the roof all fits together exactly as it should. So we can just simply use more and more of these pieces to piece this all together. I'm going to grab it again. I'm going to go Control V, and I'm going to say copy. Now this is going to be for the side pieces coming down here. I'm going to leave that on there. We're not going to need slice planes, so let's get rid of them. And we are going to need the X-form modifier, and we're probably going to need the bend modifier. But what we're not going to need is all of those segments going sideways. They're only going to need to come down because they're going to cover these corners for us. So we actually don't need the first array modifier. So I'll get rid of that. We'll pull this back into place, so it's going to be where it needs to be. And I'm going to rotate it around the corner. Again, habit would be rotate the object. But that means, again, my symmetries and whatnot will not be automatically aligned. So we're just going to go to the X form and into the gizmo for it. And we have our snap on. And if you notice, I'm working right now just in the view pivot, so it's not angled to it. And I can rotate it over 45 degrees so it fits into place. Now we need to also rotate that up. That's back to local, and we can rotate that back so it fits in place. Now I'm going to turn off my angle snap and drop that down, pull my bend back down again. It looks like it needs, drop down a little bit. And then I can add as many into the array that I'm looking for as well. So depending, and you'll see the bend needs to be adjusted a little bit more, so we can pull that back into place. Now the symmetry is going to be symmetried perfectly already one way, but now we need to make it symmetry the other way, and that's going to be on the X. We'll have to flip that one. And again, into the gizmo, Alt A for the align it up to it, and the other side is now in the correct location. Looks like the whole thing needs to be lifted up a little bit, or, what I did on mine, it's a 180 degree curve. Maybe those corner ones aren't built that way. I'm not sure. Maybe none of them are. I'm not really 100% sure. So I'm going to go back down to the tube and just take it to something like 75 and negative 75 to make sure that they don't curve over as far, so they're not running into it as much. So that looks pretty good. Again, I'm going to grab a copy of this, Control V, and now we want one across the top. We're not going to, well, we'll need the symmetry again, actually. I'm not going to need the X form because this one I can rotate without a problem. I'm probably not going to need the bend, and I'm just going to rotate that around 90 degrees. And I want to move it, across the roof into the middle somewhere, so it's in the middle. So I can just easily just go in and align it again to the middle. So don't need the Y. There we go. That's in the middle. Of course, I can then go to the array and shorten the array down to the size that I'm going to need. I could compress them together more or less with the, however I want them to overlap. And the symmetry is going to go on the other side automatically. You can see it's already in the middle, or we could, add that. Now I'm going to need one more of these. I'm going to say that, and I don't need anything essentially on this one. I'm going to get rid of it all, and I'm just going to stick this guy in the middle to cap off the center, so it's now capped off. So to get the rest of those pieces, looks like I ended up with I've got two, there we go, forgot that one, don't need it. Now we need those pieces of wood in there. Well, that's just going to be the same sort of thing. I'm just going to go and make a box, and we'll make a nice long box there. And same thing, it's going to get placed where it's supposed to, so about here. And we're going to put that in, rotate it in place the same way we did before. So into the gizmo, rotation, make sure our angle snaps on. I'm going to rotate it so it's in place. Looks like I need to move it back, and so we want to get out of the gizmo to do that. Just want to move the object into place. Back in the gizmo, let's rotate it down in local. So we can rotate that down in local. And then in the box, I'm going to go ahead and make that long enough to go down to the end. I'm probably going to make that a little smaller, that a little smaller, and I'm going to move it down so it's underneath everything. I'm going to need some height segments so that I can, bend this along the length. So we're going to bend it before the X form again. And, I want to bend it up. Looks like it's going to be a 90 degrees, which means I can also take the X form in the sub-object and rotate that down. I'm going to turn off my angle snap so I can do it nicely. And we can push that out now to whatever length we want using the height property. And of course, we can bend it a little more using the bend, and we can get it to fit in there exactly how we're looking for that piece to look in there. Now, the next thing I actually did was taper it. I taper it just above box. And if we taper it, I may only want the end to start to taper. So to do that, I'm going to turn on the limit effects and dial it up, and then go into the center point, which is 2, and slide that along. And I can now just taper that end piece up and down however I like. Now, if you want to change the way it tapers, you can get it to taper up at the end just by moving the pivot point down of it, and it'll start to taper in the end. So again, we can just go make that maybe stick out a little bit longer. Looks kind of cool. I'm going to give it that same color again. And of course, on top of the stack now, we're going to go and use a symmetry. So X, we're going to flip it. We're going to take that, plane here of the symmetry, and I'm going to align it up to the roof by the centers, and we're going to flip it both ways. That's both of those pieces done now too. Control V and go and make another copy of this. We don't need, well, we will need the symmetry on it actually, the way I'm going to do it. Probably don't need that. And I'm going to leave the bend and the taper on there. And I'm going to rotate this around. And again, just with angle snap on so I get it in the right spot. And it's going to be aligned up to the center. So it needs to be aligned to the center and just maybe moved up a little bit. And the box needs to be a whole lot shorter, which means I don't think I actually need to bend. Probably not, just the taper modifier. And of course, you can see where it's tapering. It's not tapering the right space to bring it down back to where you need it to be. And you can taper the end up, if you want this kind of fancy looking in. The symmetry, well, we're not going to want it to symmetry along X just across the Z, and now it sticks out the other side. So effectively, with playing around with your randoms and playing around with some of these shapes, you can end up with a roof really quickly that is completely procedurally built, and it's all just primitives right now. So it's incredibly easy to go ahead and adjust this, resize it, make it fit a different roof, because it's just primitives and modifiers. Hope you enjoyed that.